Hey everyone, Dominic the Primetime Treasure Hunter here. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to properly protect various collectible paper-based items that you might find yourself selling throughout the year. I'm also going to include a super special top secret tip that I'm going to pass on to you a little bit later on, so stay tuned for that. Now, as many of you know, I specialize in reselling comic books, ephemera, and different types of collectible paper-based items. So pretty much every day I find myself packing these items up, protecting them, and shipping them out to the buyer so they arrive undamaged. Now, we could ultimately go back and forth and debate whether or not you should have taken one of these paper-based items, sandwiched them between two pieces of cardboard, and put them in a clasp envelope versus put them inside of a sturdy box. The answer to that question partly depends on personal preference. It depends on your technique. It depends on your experience. It depends sometimes on the type of item, how much it costs. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. I'm not going to focus on that part of it. That's the end point. I'm not going to really focus on that on this video. I'll touch on it. I'll show you what I generally do. But if you want more detail on that, go to my playlist section and just click on shipping, and you'll see a whole bunch of shipping videos where I discuss all of these matters. But on this video, what I really want to focus on is the initial layer of protection, that initial step, which we refer to in the collectibles business as bagging and boarding. Is the item bagged and boarded? So what that means is you're going to take the paper-based item, you're going to put it inside of a plastic sleeve like this, and then you're going to have a backing board, a cardboard backing board, preferably one that's acid-free, so you don't have acids leaking into the item over time, depending on how long it's going to stay in there. And that protects it from things that, you might get a little bit of liquid that could spill on the book that would then easily wipe off because you have this little initial layer of plastic over it. Or, it protects it from surface level scratches and stuff like that. The board helps to protect it in case there's like any minor kind of stresses that might go on it. So it protects it from bends and creases. It doesn't give it full protection. It gives it some protection. It gives it an initial surface layer. You don't want to take any of the items I'm going to show you today and just take them and just throw them in an envelope, or even putting them between two pieces of cardboard without having this initial layer of protection over it. You don't even want to put it in a box that way. You have to have this surface layer. So we'll start with some initial items, and we're going to go up and up in size. Now, you can start, by the way, if we want to start really small, there are actual postcard sleeves that you could get to put postcards in, and there's postcard boards that you could put inside, and it's the same type of concept as the other types of items I'm going to show you. You can see these things are going to get really big in size as we go on to the different types of items, but it's the same concept throughout. Now, I know a lot of you don't necessarily do postcards, but if you do, you're going to see that this company comes up over and over again. It's the one that I like to use, BCW. They're not paying me to make this video. I will put affiliate links down below to any of the bags and boards that I show you, or some of them, and then you could easily find the others. That'll be down below in the description section. They are affiliate links, so I get a little bit of commission off of it, but I am showing you stuff that I use day in and day out in my business. So let's start here. And don't worry, if you don't do comic books, this is not something we're going to focus on. I'm going to show you there's different types of items you could put inside of these bags and boards besides comics. So even if you sell other stuff, this could still give you some ideas. But this is just your average modern day comic book. This wasn't published all too long ago, part of the Rebirth series. And this is going to go inside of what we would call a modern or current bag and board. So the dimensions here are 6 7/8 by 10.5 inches. And so I showed you an example right here. This is just one of those sleeves. And if you want to just see one of the boards, I'll just take one out as an example. There's no need for me to show them to you for every size because it's the same thing, just on a bigger scale. But this is it right here, and it's a sturdy cardboard. Now, they do have cheap, flimsy ones out there that bend really easily. You don't want that. You want there to be like a little bit of a tension to it, and there to be just a little bit of a resistance there. Because if it's basically like just a paper towel, that's not going to really work for you. It's not going to help out. So you're just going to take it, and you're going to see here, there's like a little lip that goes over, and you're just going to put it right here. and just slide it right in there, and then your comic book goes right inside. Now, I always recommend having it so that you put the flap over the back area like this here, okay? So there's the front of the comic, and here's the back. And the piece of tape that you use, if you do use tape to fasten it down, and keep in mind with these, you can buy ones that have a self-adhesive strip here so that you don't even have to involve yourself with tape at all. So that's obviously very safe. Now, you can make tape safe. If you put tape down like this, the thing you just want to be careful of when you take the comic book out, or whatever item, whatever paper item that you have in there, it doesn't have to just be comics, is you want to make sure that you just totally remove the tape and just put it somewhere else, because what you don't want to happen is that you take the comic book out like this and then it catches on the tape. I know many people, even seasoned collectors, who were overconfident with this and they left the tape on there and then it just popped off. It caught on the book, and once it caught on, they couldn't remove it without it taking off some of the paper or some of the color on there, and then they've got a damaged book and they've devalued it. So you want to be super, super careful about that and make sure that you don't make that mistake. But that's just a little inside tip there. So that's the modern and like I said, current version. And as I'm going to show you, these boards also come in stacks of 100. That's what I would recommend. You could get smaller, like you get 50, but I recommend getting them in 100, especially if you're going to sell a lot of the stuff. That's how you get the best price. So there's going to be a matching one for the boards. I didn't bring down all the boards here, but I'll show you the boards with the next level that we're going to go up to, which is Silver Age. And these are for older comic books. And as you get into older periodicals, not just comics, you're going to see that the width continues to increase as you go back. And so as an example, now this is modern one here, but as you can see here, this Bugs Bunny one is older. And so once you start getting into comic books that are in like the 1970s types of range, or in that Silver Age, some 1960s and stuff like that. And as you can see here, as I line it up, and I'm going to line it up flush over here, but you're going to see this red part of the comic for the Bugs Bunny one, it's popping out a little bit here on the side because it's a little bit wider. And so what you need for that are what are called regular and Silver Age bags. And same thing with the boards. Now for this, you've got 7 1/8 by 10.5, and you'll notice that the board is naturally going to be a little bit smaller because it's got to fit into that sleeve. So you can see here, it's not 7 1/8, it's 7 inches, but here the 10.5 is the same. But you have to make sure, obviously, that the board could fit in there without bending. Now, there are some people who deal in comic books who use those regular Silver Age boards for the modern comics as well, because they like having a little bit of extra leeway there. You could see here, there's not a problem with this. There's nothing wrong with doing this, but there are some modern books that will be too snug sometimes, even for the modern bags and boards. So you want to put it inside the regular one so you have a little bit more space. And to show you what I was talking about the boards here, just to give you another a view of it on the side, this is an unopened pack of 100. So this is what it would look like when you wind up purchasing something like that. Now, we could start going out a little bit more into even older comic books, and that would be here where we're dealing with golden age comic books. So these are these 10-cent ones, like from the 1940s, some in the 1930s and stuff like that. Even some in the early 1950s are going to require the golden age board because it's wider. So just to show you in terms of scale how we're getting wider and wider as we go back, I'm going to flush it left here, and you can see there's the red comic book peeking out, and here's the little Lulu one in the back peeking out even more than that. So the problem is that this comic book is not going to fit into a silver bag, and it's not going to obviously fit into a modern one. So you need to then go out and you need to purchase golden age bags and golden age boards. You can see here we have a board that goes in there as well. So again, get those in packs of 100. And I told you you could not just put things like, literally, it doesn't have to be literal that you're just going to put Golden Age comic books in there. I like to use them for trade paperback. So you could see here, now this is modern. It's a thick book, but even though it's modern, it's not going to fit inside of a modern bag and board because it's just too thick. But it will fit really nicely into a Golden Age bag and board. And once in a while, depending on how thick it is, you could get it into a silver one. So that's the three main levels of comic books, except when you start getting into what we call a Treasury edition. And I'm going to get into that in just a moment. But for the main average comic book that you're going to come across, those are the three types of bags and boards. Now, for those, and this gets a little bit of a teaser into the secret tip that I'm going to give you a little bit later. If you never watched this video, and you were just looking for a way to protect your comic books, you'd probably just go online and you'd type in comic book protection, comic book bags, maybe. You might even type in comic book boards, and you would be able to easily find these things on eBay and Amazon. But the item I'm going to show you a little bit later, it's not so simple, but just hold on for that. But it's the same concept here in terms of easily being able to find stuff for something like magazines. And as you can see here, we have dimensions. Now we're getting even wider. 8 3/4 and 11 1/8 inches. So as you can see here, it works really well for magazines as it's intended. Even these older ones like here, these 15-cent issues, they work great for it. That's exactly what they're supposed to do, is protect magazines. But I also will sometimes use them for wider comic books, either modern ones like this or some older ones like this that you might remember from the father-son video, because these here are even wider than the Golden Age ones. As you can see here, we just continue to go out in terms of width. So there's not a one-size-fits-all solution really for every comic book, because the other thing you want to be careful of, you don't just want to buy an oversized one and then put your comic books all inside like a magazine bag and board, because then what's going to happen is the comic book or whatever you put in there is going to start moving around in there, and there could be damage with that along the way. So you do want to make sure it's relatively snug, but not overly snug. You want to take that Goldilocks approach that I talk about sometimes. You want to get it just right. So there's that. Other things that I like to use these magazine bags and boards, I use them a lot for, in fact, I use them for things more than just magazines. I love to use them for those kind of comics. I like to use them for old vintage menu items like this from Big Boy. That's a cool one from the Big Boy restaurant chain. I like to use them for signed photos or just other kind of photos, like this one from Star Wars is really cool. Or this signed one by George Perez, this art piece right here. I use them all the time for that, and that's the magazine bags and boards. So one of the other things to make sure you pay attention to in this video, especially if you're new, is don't lock your mind into only using the item for what it says. So I put posters inside these things, all sorts of things. It could be just some kind of foldable ephemera paper item that could go inside of there. Calendars could go inside of these things depending on the size. It just depends. You just got to match up the size with these types of bags and boards. Now, I did tell you earlier that there's another type of comic book out there that I really enjoy. They're called Treasury-sized comic books. These are two examples of them if you've never seen them before, the Super Friends one and the Batman one. They're basically giant, oversized comic books. And as you can see here, they dwarf the size of the magazine-sized comic book. So that gives you a sense of how big they are. Yes, there are bags and boards for these as well. They're in terms of the bag, the dimensions are 10.5 inches by 13.5 inches, and because they're Treasury comic books, and some of these will actually say the word Treasury on the comic book. Marvel Treasuries, for example, matches up to what you see here. It says Treasury right there, and it would say a Treasury on the boards as well if you bought a stack of boards. And as you can see here, it says resealable. So for these particular ones, you don't need any tape. You just roll over the flap, and it will naturally stick and adhere to the other side. Now, pay attention to those dimensions, right? 10.5 by 13.5. That's going to be important in just a second. I'm going to skip over a particular size, and this is going to get into my top secret tip here in just a moment. And I'm going to jump up to an 11 by 17 size, and that is the size that is typically reserved for art prints. If you go to my eBay store, you will see a lot of art prints for sale. Most of them are comic related ones. This is a good example of an 11 by 17 art print. It is signed by George Perez, famous artist. It's also signed by Tom Smith, a colorist who often worked with George Perez. So you could see here, it's inside a protective bag. And then we also have a protective board. And, you know, this just comes inside of a big giant stack of 100, just like the bags do, as you could see here. And it's pretty easy to find them because you know you have an art print on your hand. And so you look for something to protect art prints. So simple to find. Just got to type it into Amazon or eBay and you can find the bags and you can find the boards. If you want to get a sense of what they look like in a pack of 100, this is it right here. So as you can see, these things are going to get bigger and heavier as we get up there in terms of the sizes. And if you want to start getting into sizes for art prints beyond 11 by 17, then you're going to have to go to brands outside of BCW. There are companies that just make different custom sizes. Like I have art prints that go into something like this, which would be a 19 by 22. So there are options outside of BCW. You just have to search for your specific size. That leaves me to my last item. And this is the one that's not so easy to find something for. And what we're dealing with here is sheet music. Now, you will often come across sheet music at places like estate sales, sometimes library sales. Sometimes libraries will even give things like this away. I remember watching a video by Don the Auction Professor. Go check out his channel if you have not already. And check out the Don and Dom show. We do shows together. They're usually lots of fun. Where he gets lots of this stuff and sells them for great money sometimes. Now, don't get me wrong. It's like anything else. There are some pieces of sheet music that you can't sell for more than $10 without lotting them together with other ones or with other similarly themed ones. I won't sell any for less than $9.99, and there are some that will sell for significantly more than that. Typically with sheet music, you've got obviously the front and the back. There's usually a song on the back, and you know this is the main kind of artistic part. Thing people really love is what this image looks like, and then inside you typically have here. You've just got your one sheet inside usually. Now there are some that are deluxe editions that have more sheets than that, but that's pretty much your basic contents of sheet music. So they're really very thin. The issue is the size. The size of most sheet music prints like this are 11 by 14. So that brings us back to our other types of bags and boards here, right? If we want to protect it. This is not going to work. It's going to be too small because it's a treasury size. So we are just here dealing with one that is 10.5 by 13.5. So you can see here what the problem is that this is too wide for this bag. So it's just not going to be able to fit inside of it. This bag is not an option. So what does that leave us with? Well, you're probably saying, well, since there's magazine bags and boards and there's treasury size bags and boards and comic size bags and boards and art print size bags and boards, there must be sheet music bags and boards. So why don't you just type that into Amazon, eBay, and just get 100 of those like you've shown me with everything else, right? Well, here's the problem. There's no such thing that's called sheet music bags and boards. Now, there's a way around it, but this gets into the secret tip. Now, before I do that, let me show you what a lot of people will do if they don't know about this secret tip, is that they will just take the 11 by 17 bag and board, and they will take the sheet music, and they will put it inside of here, and this will technically work, so it is going to fit it, but it is oversized for it. And then what you've got to do is you really probably would want to cut this down a little bit right here so you don't have to use as much cardboard on the outside, and you're just wasting resources. You're wasting plastic, you're wasting cardboard, and then you're wasting the cardboard that you might put around the outside of this. So what are we going to do to find a bag and a board? Because the problem is that these are too small and these are too big. So we need a Goldilocks solution, something that's just right. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's no such thing that is called a sheet music bag and board. So that's not going to work. So what are you going to do next? You're going to type in the dimensions of the sheet music, 11 by 14, and hope that you can find bags and boards that way. Well, if you do that, you will be able to find some companies that make 11 by 14 bags, and they're reasonably priced. They're not made by BCW, and you could get those. The problem becomes when you try to find the boards. The boards are more expensive, and when you look for boards that are 11 by 14 on Amazon and eBay, there is no company that makes them in stacks of 100. None. That's as of me making this video in March of 2020. The most you could buy in bulk for 11 by 14 boards is a stack of 50, and they're quite expensive. It's $35 for that, and it starts to become cost prohibitive. So you need to be in the know of how to get around this, and this is our solution right here. You need to get these. These are the Life magazine boards. And they're called Life magazine boards because they're named after Life magazine, which was this size, about 11 by 14. But if you look here on the main product sheet here, you're going to see that while we have the 14 for the 14 inches, it doesn't say 11. It says 10 and 7/8. And that's why when you go and do a search for 11 by 14 boards, that it's not going to come up, because you would need to know that the right dimension to type in is 10 and 7/8. How are you going to know that? This is why I say this is sort of an inside secret, because how are you going to know to type in Life magazine boards, right? Because you're looking for it not for Life magazines, you're looking for it for sheet music. And so you're going to come up empty for the boards. You know, and if you're trying to get them in stacks of 100, if you search 11 by 14, or if you search anything, by the way, for sheet music. So, and there are matching bags for the Life magazine one. So this is an example of a piece of sheet music inside the Life magazine bag and board. If you want to see it taken out right here, that's one of the art prints I've got right over here. So there's the bag, Life magazine, and there's the Life magazine board. And you just put them together just like you would put all these other ones. So we'll just slip this right in here, and then we'll just take our piece of sheet music and just gently slide it into here, and now we're all set. That's the Goldilocks solution. Not too small, not too big. It's just right. And Papa Bear is pretty happy right now. I'm going to chillax for the rest of the day and work on some other items. But I hope that that inside tip helped you, and that you enjoyed seeing all these different sizes of bags and boards all the way down, starting with those postcard bags, and then just going, and here we go, postcard sleeves, going all the way up to these giant 19 by 22s, and there's even bigger ones than that. In terms of what I generally do in most situations after I've put them inside of the bag and board, I've shown this in other videos, but I take a strong, sturdy piece of cardboard like this, one that does not bend easily, and I'll make sure that I've got a little bit of margin around it. So there's like a little bit of a lip. You don't want it pressing flush against it, so you want to kind of center it in there. And what you could do is you could just take some invisible tape, and you could just brace it onto here like this. So you just take that and put it over like this. This way it doesn't move around when it's inside of there. And when I say inside of there, it's because we're going to take another layer and put it right on top like this. So you see here, we've got a piece of tape here that braces it, a piece of tape here that braces it, and you can even brace it on top and bottom if you want to, and then you just sandwich it like this. And then what you're going to do, if you want, is initially you could even take another piece of tape like this just to make it easier to work with, and you just put it like that so it makes it nice and stable. And you can put one on the other side. And then what I do is I just take packing tape like this, and I just tape the edges all around, okay? And that will provide another barrier, so the item inside of it, it protects it even further from jutting out. So you've got it protected all the way around, and then you can just take it and just slide it right inside of your clasp envelope. And there are different sizes of these envelopes, obviously 9 by 12s. This one being magazine would be a 10 by 13, and just put it right in there. Just, you know, put it over like that and just tape across it. And then I make sure that I get a stamp for do not bend, and I just do that and put do not bend on the other side as well. And I do this all the time, folks, and I don't have a problem. If you want to, you could put additional layers of cardboard, so you could get 2 layers, 3 layers, 4 layers. But remember, the main thing is making sure whatever cardboard layers you're using are strong. So if you use 3 layers of flimsy cardboard, that's not going to matter, and it's going to be worse than if you used 1 layer of strong, thick, hard cardboard. So that's the key, is making sure whatever you're putting around that item on the outside is nice and strong. So it's going to provide a lot of stress resistance when it's going through the mail. All of the items that I showed you today are items that I currently have for sale in my eBay store. So if you're interested in those, just go down below into the description section. You'll see a link to them. The only exception to that is this one here, which I haven't put up yet, but I'll be putting this one up soon, along with a whole bunch of other art prints that are signed by George Perez and Tom Smith. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you come to my Facebook group, Facebook Reselling Resource Center, and check out my Instagram account as well, at prime_time_treasure. Put a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you back at the next video, everyone. Take care.